The year is 2025. Donald J. Trump, once again occupying the Oval Office, wasted no time in enacting his vision for America. His return, fueled by promises to dismantle the deep state and reclaim American greatness, sent shockwaves through Washington and beyond. This time he came armed with Agenda 47, a 10-point plan aimed at reshaping the federal government. His primary targets? The very institutions tasked with upholding the nation's laws and security, the FBI, CIA, and NSA. Trump, emboldened by his victory and fueled by a desire for control, set his sights on consolidating power and rooting out perceived enemies within. The president's rhetoric struck a chord with his base, who had long viewed these agencies with suspicion. They cheered his pronouncements, seeing them as long overdue reckonings. For them, Agenda 47 represented a cleansing fire, a necessary step in restoring faith in a system they believed had been corrupted. Opponents, however, watched with growing alarm, fearing a dismantling of democratic norms and a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of one man. The stage was set for a showdown, a clash between competing visions of American governance, with the fate of the nation hanging in the balance. The first casualty of Agenda 47 was the civil service. The reinstatement of Schedule F, a Trump-era policy allowing for the swift dismissal of federal employees, sent a chill through the ranks. Thousands of career officials, many with decades of experience, found themselves vulnerable to politically motivated firings. The message was clear: loyalty to the president trumped experience and expertise. This move, while celebrated by some as a necessary corrective to bloated bureaucracy, struck fear into the hearts of many seasoned professionals. They worried about the politicization of their work, the chilling effect on dissent, and the potential loss of institutional knowledge. The intelligence community, long accustomed to operating in the shadows, found itself thrust into the harsh glare of partisan politics. Trump, convinced that these agencies were hotbeds of opposition, moved swiftly to install loyalists and purge those deemed insufficiently supportive. The president, with his penchant for distrust and his belief in his own instincts over expert analysis, viewed the intelligence community as a threat to his authority. He sought to bend it to his will, to transform it from an independent source of information into an echo chamber of his own views. The potential consequences of such a move were dire, threatening to undermine the nation's ability to gather accurate intelligence and respond effectively to threats both foreign and domestic. The intelligence community, once a bastion of non-partisanship, found itself caught in the crosshairs of Agenda 47. The president, convinced of deep-seated opposition within its ranks, sought to remake it in his own image. This involved a multi-pronged approach, targeting personnel, operations, and even the very legal framework governing intelligence gathering. Trump's goal was nothing short of a complete overhaul, a transformation that would leave his mark on these institutions for decades to come. One of the most immediate and far-reaching changes was the implementation of Schedule F. This executive order, a relic of Trump's first term, allowed for the reclassification of thousands of federal jobs, stripping away civil service protections and making it easier to fire employees deemed disloyal. The order had a chilling effect on the intelligence community, where analysts and officers worried about being targeted for their assessments rather than their performance. The fear of retribution for speaking truth to power became palpable, casting a long shadow over the intelligence community. Further stoking anxieties was the appointment of loyalists to key positions within intelligence agencies. Trump, bypassing traditional vetting processes, installed individuals with questionable qualifications but unwavering allegiance. These appointments, often driven by political considerations rather than merit, raised concerns about the politicization of intelligence gathering and analysis. Critics argued that this would compromise the objectivity and integrity of the intelligence community, turning it into a tool for political expediency. Beyond personnel changes, Trump sought to reshape the very laws governing intelligence gathering. He targeted the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, which he had long viewed as a tool used against him and his allies. Agenda 47 called for increased oversight of FISA courts, which authorized surveillance warrants in national security cases. While proponents argued for greater transparency, critics feared that this would hamstring the intelligence community's ability to conduct essential surveillance, potentially leaving the nation vulnerable. The debate over FISA, once confined to legal and intelligence circles, became increasingly polarized, reflecting the broader societal divisions that Trump had both inherited and exacerbated. As Agenda 47 unfolded, its tendrils reached far beyond the walls of intelligence agencies, casting a long shadow over American governance and the very fabric of American democracy. The implications of these changes, both immediate and long-term, were profound, raising fundamental questions about the balance of power, the rule of law, and the future of American democracy itself. The very foundations of American governance seemed to be shifting, leaving many to wonder if the country they knew would ever be the same. One of the most immediate and concerning consequences was the erosion of public trust in government institutions. Trump's relentless attacks on the intelligence community, coupled with his efforts to install loyalists and purge perceived enemies, fueled a deep sense of cynicism and distrust among many Americans. This erosion of trust extended beyond the intelligence community, seeping into other branches of government and further polarizing an already divided nation. The very notion of a shared reality, essential for the functioning of a healthy democracy, seemed to be slipping away. The weakening of institutional checks and balances, a cornerstone of American democracy, was perhaps the most alarming consequence of Agenda 47. Trump's efforts to consolidate power within the executive branch, coupled with his disdain for dissent and his willingness to disregard norms, raised fears of authoritarianism. The system of checks and balances, designed to prevent the concentration of power in any one person or branch of government, seemed increasingly fragile in the face of Trump's relentless assault. The long-term consequences of Agenda 47 on national security were equally troubling. The politicization of intelligence gathering and analysis, coupled with the loss of experienced personnel, raised serious concerns about the government's ability to identify and respond effectively to threats. The potential for intelligence to be skewed to fit a particular narrative, rather than reflecting objective reality, was a chilling prospect with potentially disastrous consequences for national security. The very institutions tasked with keeping America safe seemed to be teetering on the brink, their ability to fulfill their mission compromised by political interference. In the wake of Agenda 47, America found itself more divided than ever. Trump's actions, rather than healing the wounds of the past, seemed to have ripped them wide open. The nation was a tinderbox of anger, resentment, and distrust, with each side viewing the other as an existential threat. The very fabric of American society seemed to be fraying, strained to the breaking point by partisan rancor and the erosion of shared values. The American experiment, once a beacon of hope for the world, seemed to be teetering on the precipice of collapse. Public opinion, already deeply polarized, fractured further along partisan lines. Trump's supporters, many of whom had long viewed the federal government with suspicion, cheered his efforts to dismantle what they saw as a bloated and corrupt bureaucracy. They viewed Agenda 47 as a necessary corrective, a long overdue reckoning for institutions they believed had become unaccountable and hostile to their values. To them, Trump was a courageous leader, willing to take on entrenched interests and fight for the forgotten men and women of America. Opponents of the administration watched with growing horror, seeing in Agenda 47 a dangerous lurch toward authoritarianism. They feared that Trump, emboldened by his victory and fueled by a thirst for power, was dismantling the very guardrails of American democracy. Protests erupted across the country, met with a mixture of indifference and hostility from the administration. The country seemed to be careening towards an unknown future, with the potential for further unrest and instability looming large. The long-term consequences of this division were difficult to predict, but the outlook was bleak. The erosion of trust in government institutions, the weakening of democratic norms, and the rise of political violence all pointed to a deeply troubled future. The American experiment, once a beacon of hope for the world, seemed to be facing its most serious test yet. Whether the country could find a way to bridge its divides and heal its wounds remained an open question, one that would determine the fate of American democracy for generations to come.